Hello.
Good evening, everybody. This is Zach. We're just going to get started here in a minute. Just a reminder to stay muted if you don't mind. We are recording tonight in order to post it up for people that are unable to attend tonight. Thanks for joining in with us again tonight. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started so we can honor and respect everybody's time. Again, I'm Zach Friend, County Supervisor, and we're joined by a number of people from Public Works tonight, and we appreciate so many of you from the community address coming tonight for another one of our community meetings on the Rio Del Mar flood project. As many of you know, because many of you have attended them, we've held previous virtual community meetings on this before the pandemic, a number of them with the Rio Del Mar Improvement Association down at the Rio Sands over the last at least 8 or 9 years that I've been in office, when we were in the planning process of the project, and now all the way into the actual proposal for the project. Tonight, we're just hoping to answer as many questions as possible from people. Ken Edler, who's the Assistant Director of Public Works, is going to be leading the discussion tonight. He's got a short presentation, and we want to make sure that we have a lot of opportunities for people to get their questions answered. There is a website as well where a number of the frequently asked questions that are continually being updated, and we'll provide that to you as well. And as always, if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself or to Kent after this to ensure that we get everything addressed. It's really important to us to ensure that you have an opportunity to have your questions addressed on this. And I'm going to pass it over to Kent, and a great appreciation for Kent. Actually, I'll do a brief introduction of the others from Public Works that are here. We have Matt Machado, who's the Director of Public Works and also the Deputy County Administrative Officer. We have Rachel Fatui, who is our flood guru in, that's her new title, I guess, for Public Works. And we have Kent Edler, who, as I'd mentioned, is the Assistant Director of Public Works and also the lead on this project on behalf of Public Works. And also for my office, we have Kieran Kelly, who is the newly joined the office, replacing Patrick Mulhern, who moved out of state. And Kieran handles all issues related to Rio Del Mar area, as well as my Chief of Staff, Allison Violante, is also on this. If you have any questions of staff too, we're here to answer them. Thanks, Kent. We're going to pass it on to you.
All right, good evening, everybody. Let me share my screen here real quick. All right, can you all see that there? Let me adjust my Zoom meeting here so I can keep admitting people as this is going on. Okay, so good evening, everybody. I'm Kent Edler, one of the Assistant Directors of Public Works, like Zach just said. And so I'm going to give a brief overview of the project to address the flooding issues in the Rio Del Mar Flats area and discuss the proposed assessment district. I'd also like to point out at the beginning here that all of us here at the county respect that some of you support the assessment district and that some of you may be opposed to it. But our purpose tonight is to provide you with the facts and information about the project and the proposed assessment, and to answer any questions so you can all make informed decisions with respect to voting on the assessment district formation. So why does the Rio Del Mar Flats flood? It's a combination of several factors. To start, the Rio Del Mar Flats is located in a FEMA designated floodplain. This area used to be a wetland, and it was developed in the 1920s prior to any real regulation on construction in floodplains or in wetland areas. And the drainage in the Rio Del Mar Flats, when it was developed, is piped to Aptos Creek near the western edge of the Esplanade parking lot. And the drainage system that drains all the streets in the area is very gently sloped. It's nearly flat. When the area was developed, there was actually a big hill that was essentially in the area where the Rio Sands is, and that area was used to, they basically graded out that hill and filled up the area. Unfortunately, if it would have been graded up about another 6 to 10 feet, a lot of these drainage issues and flooding issues wouldn't have been as much of an issue. But unfortunately, that was the soil that they had at the time, and kind of everybody's stuck with the way it is now. And so also when the creek levels are high, the water level is above the outlets where the water goes out into Aptos Creek. And then due to the flatness of the pipe system, there just isn't enough power per se or pressure to force the drainage out into the creek. Instead, what happens is that the water doesn't drain and the streets start to flood. So the project that has been designed will take water in flood events that would normally go to the outlets into Aptos Creek and redirect it into an outlet which is a drainage pit near the beach. The project includes replacement of a storm drain line on Aptos Beach Drive from Venetian to Stephen, a new pump station in the triangular area down below here, or in this area in yellow. It's across from Bailey Properties and the Pixie Deli. And then there's an underground outlet across Beach Drive from the stairs that come down from Rio Del Mar Boulevard in a vegetated area. And that's where all the drainage water will be pumped to. And I just want to note that the flooding on the project, or the project is intended to address flooding up to the 10-year storm event. The project is not intended to change FEMA flood maps, address Aptos Creek flooding, or address flooding due to sea level rise. So design is nearly complete, and we feel very fortunate to have received a $600,000 flood mitigation grant for the design from FEMA, and the project was reviewed by state parks, the Coastal Commission, and FEMA. It also went through an extensive environmental review process and ultimately received a coastal permit. We also feel very fortunate to have subsequently received about $4.2 million in grants for the construction of the project from FEMA and Cal OES and the Department of Water Resources through an integrated regional water management program. So it's about a $4.8 million construction project, and the remaining $600,000 that we don't have from grants will come from local funds that are on hand in the Zone 6 drainage flood control district. But the project will require ongoing annual maintenance of the pump station and the drainage system at an annual estimated cost of about $121,000. So although we've been very successful in obtaining the grants, there is not a funding source that we've identified for this annual ongoing maintenance, and we won't build a project which we can't maintain. So the community is being asked to decide whether they would like to form an assessment district to pay for the ongoing maintenance of the pump station and the associated facilities. We hired a consultant team, and some of them are on the line tonight, to develop an engineer's report regarding the cost per each parcel in the affected area. The boundaries of the assessment district are based upon parcels that will receive a direct or what's called a special benefit from the project, which is either a reduction in flooding on the properties or an improvement to accessing property due to less flooding. So this slide shows the range of proposed assessments. The consultant team established the proposed assessment amounts in the following way. Parcels at lower elevations have a higher proposed assessment since they have a higher flood risk. Elevations were broken into 3 categories based upon whether they intersect the 14-foot, 16-foot, or 18-foot contours. And there's also a factor for whether the parcel is developed or not. Next, based upon the type of use on a parcel, such as whether it's a single family residence, a hotel, a commercial property, etc., an estimate of the number of vehicle trips was generated to determine the benefits received due to improved access. And then the factors above received various benefit points and were totaled, and based upon the total maintenance cost, each individual parcel was assigned a proposed assessment. And so the range for a single family dwelling is with access only benefits is $125 annually. And then the single family dwelling, they range from about $250,000 or $250 to $375 if you have flood and access benefits. So if you're in one of the areas that's lower down in elevation, the proposed assessment amount will be $375 annually. And then the non-residential would be commercial and hotels, and those range from about $295 annually to a little over $1,100. And then these amounts are the way that it's written into the proposed assessment district is that they would go up annually based on the greater of the consumer price index, or 2.5% basically to cover, increasing costs and so forth with maintenance. And I also want to point out that on this website, so CivicMic.com, there you can go to that website and you find you can enter in this address, or just go to CivicMic.com. Then you can get to the County of Santa Cruz on there, and you can zoom in onto a specific parcel, and you can find the exact assessment on each parcel. So you could look up your own parcel that's specific to you or that you have interest in. So that's the end of my presentation. I will stop screen sharing here, and then we'll open it up to questions. I don't know, Zach, if you have anything else that you want to add there.
Yeah, possibly the easiest way might be to just, if you have a question, to put it in a chat, just so we don't have a lot of people unmuting at the same time. But if you're struggling with that, go ahead and just unmute and you can ask a question. This was a bit of an abbreviated presentation because we've given a number of these previously, but we want to make sure that everybody understands why the assessment, where the numbers come from, and how to get more information. All right, so we have our first question. Mr. Singh, please.
Sure. Thanks, Zach and Kent. I think thanks definitely for giving us this opportunity. So we've just moved into the neighborhood, Zach, and we've bought the 202 Beach Drive. That's right in the corner of the beach island, and it's right at the location where you are putting the outlet. And our concern is that the outlet will wash away the sandbar that protects us from the floods. Earlier this year in January, half the beach got washed away because of the floods up from the river. And this will be pumping all of that storm drain water right there, will pretty much bring all of the storm surge water right by our foundation. So it's a significant concern that we have is that this project will undermine the stability of our home, right? So we wanted to get some background. I think there's lots of questions in terms of why wouldn't you just pump it into the river itself, and why that location, right? Because effectively, there's think of the big, thousands of gallons of water being pumped right at our foundation, and that's really what we're concerned about.
Okay, I can answer those questions. I'll start with kind of why we didn't decided not to pump into the river. So we did look at various alternatives for the project. So what happens sometimes if there's a sandbar there. So if we pump into the river, there's a couple things that could happen. One is the water we're pumping into the river, it could come back up the storm drain system. So we're kind of just recirculating the water. And then there's also an environmental component to this project as well, in that this project will clean up some of the water that would normally go to the river. So I mentioned that this project went through an environmental review process. So part of that is cleaning up the water. So it's going to actually be cleaner as it goes into it's going to remove some of the water that would otherwise go and pollute the Aptos Creek area. And then to your question about the area where the outlet is. So we had a soils engineer and geologist. They looked at that area. They did borings. They looked at the stability of that area, and this area was the most stable area. They went back at least 50 years on stability and determined that, based on the amount of water that's going to go out and be put in this area, that it's a stable location to release that water. So it has been fully analyzed by our consulting engineers.
Yes, so Kent, if you could help us there, if you don't mind, I'm just sharing the diagram, right? This is based on the January flood. Our home is right behind that. And if you look, about 10 feet of water was just washed away, right? And the location where you're putting the outlet is right where I have my cursor. So all of this sandbar is the only thing that protects our home from the next flood. And I have videos where there's a big churn of water. So this sand is going to get washed away by pumping the water, right? So all of that storm water is just going to go hit our home. So that's a concern.
Yeah, I understand that concern. Again, we had our geologists look at it, and the water is going to be, it's not going to be released over the surface. It's going to be actually into deep pits that will go essentially infiltrate into the soil. I don't know, Rachel, if you have anything to add on that as well. You're still muted there, Rachel.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention, and you said it first. It is going to be similar to a bubbler, but mostly it's going to be in the ground and in the sandy area below the ground. And whatever does not percolate in the ground going to bubble up. It's not going to be gushing out. It's going to be like a bubbler. And actually, you will see things like pop up when the water comes out. It's not pointed to the ocean.
Yeah, but so it's going to go into the sand, right? And the sand is right by our foundation, right? So, and just based on the photographs that you've shown with all of the streets that are completely flooded, right? That's thousands of gallons of water, right? That you can have to pump out. And so, when you pump sand out, pump by definition means that you're putting force to the water, so the water will drain the sand away, won't it?
No, it will be it's going to come into a manhole, and the manhole has solid walls around it. And then through that wall, it will seep out to the sand around it, and whatever does not, it will come up as a bubbler.
Right, and what comes up will actually go on the sand, right?
Yes, when it bubbles up, it's gonna be on the sand. Yes.
And it'll wash away the sand, won't it?
Well, it is also in a vegetated area, and we will armor that vegetation more when we do the work. We're gonna have a lot more vegetation in that area. We have a vegetation plan there too, from the bubbler.
Rachel, if I could chime in. Good evening, this is Matt Machado. I'm the Director of Public Works, and I want to share two thoughts. We built a similar bubble up system at Twin Lakes over near the harbor, and we haven't seen that sand wash away. Our analysis stayed true to the drainage plan that we had there. And so we think we have experience in this area. Our experts have a lot of experience. And I think there may be value in taking this conversation offline and walking you through the plans and having a more detailed conversation. And so if you can reach out to us, we could put our contact information in the chat. And I think it's worthy of getting together and looking at the details of our plan and showing our detailed thoughts.
Sure, really appreciate that, Matt, Zach. And I think we're new to this place. We're really concerned, and I really got freaked out by the storm. In fact, I'll put a video of that. Right, yeah. So let's follow it offline.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Kent, I know you can see the chat as well. There's additional questions that have been posed. Inbar says you have a question or two. Ideally, if you could just make them shorter if you have multiple questions, or go ahead and put the questions in the chat as Joey had. But Inbar, will turn to you for the next question.
Yeah, this is actually Inbar's husband, Rick Tallman. Hey, look, we live on Beach Drive, and I know a lot of people have talked about, why isn't this being, quote, funded normally? And, there's an infrastructure bill in Congress, and I'm not going to talk about the questions around why we're trying to put a special district here, but I am going to ask some questions around the methodology used in the engineering report. And particularly, I'd like to understand how the general benefit calculation was done. And why only 8,000 people in Rio Del Mar were used in that calculation.
I'm going to see if one of our consultants on here, maybe Sarah, if you can address that.
And to put a finer point on it, the general benefit piece, as you guys all know, you have to apportion it between special and general, and you can't actually put the fees against the general benefit portion. So it behooves people to have a small general benefit portion, large special portion. I'd love to hear.
Hi there, my name is Sarah Mayers with NBS, and we're the firm that did prepared the engineer's report for the assessment district. When we evaluated the general benefit component for this assessment district, the speaker is absolutely right that the amount of general benefit that is determined cannot be levied as part of the assessment that is charged to each individual parcel in the assessment district boundary. Only the amount associated with special benefits, excuse me, can be levied. So when we evaluate the general benefit, we do want to take a look at the property overall, the characteristics of the neighborhood and the project and what have you. And because we are separately assessing the beach parking lot and some of the other properties that folks from the larger area or even traveling from either outside of California or outside of the country or what have you to visit your beautiful beaches, that visitation is captured in the assessment for the beach property itself. And so when we're looking at the general benefit, we're really looking at those, those cars that may pass through the area that are local to the area and that sort of thing. And so when we look at the sort of general vicinity, that is what we were trying to capture there. So that is why we've looked at the general population in the surrounding area as the comparison factor that we're using to determine the general benefit.
Did you talk to state parks about how many people use Rio Del Mar State Beach?
No, but we're capturing the assessment related to the beach on the beach parking lot parcel.
So you're catching 49 spots at the end of Beach Drive. You're not catching the usage of the beach. State parks, I used to work for state parks. State parks does a visitor count. They know how many people come to the beach, both Seacliff, both Rio Del Mar. You're often scores magnitude of 10 on the users of the beach. And, this is the general benefit. And saying that there's 8,000 people in Aptos to calculate the general benefit when you yourself just said San Jose, Watsonville, Soquel, everybody in California comes down to this beach. There's not just 49 parking spots.
Understood. And
so the general benefit would be, probably, multiples of the size that it is right now. It should be. And yet, 4.7% when 1 mile of the beach is, essentially 1 mile of the property is beachfront property. It's hard to fathom how you guys can come up with that number. That's first question. Second question, access benefit calculation. All residents are given a 1.0 access benefit, or $1.25 if you're a resident. Beach Drive has not had egress problems ever since I've lived here, and I've lived here over 10 plus years. I can always get up and go out of Rio Del Mar, Boulevard. Yet people who are sitting on, let's say Aptos Beach Drive and Marina, where you have some nice pictures of being flooded out, are impacted, can barely get in their house. Yet you apply the same access benefit to everybody. 1.0 equals $125. You have the ability to, provide different, scales of benefits. You did it for the flooding side. Why didn't you do that for the access side?
Based on, based on our analysis, this is the access benefit that we have attributed to the property.
So you're saying my access benefit is the same as a person on Marina and Beach Drive and Aptos Beach Drive?
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing. Correct? Okay. So, I think, this is fundamentally flawed, the methodology used in this engineering report. And, people should hear this. I think it's, what you guys have done is, calculate things that are, frankly, don't have any rationale to it. And that goes with not including the whole beach state park, including as a public parcel. 1 mile of it is a public parcel. It's not even in the district. It should be. You put the creek in the district, but not the state park, only the parking lot at the end. Why was that?
Do you mean the actual
The state park itself runs a mile down the beach, not just that little parking lot. They're a benefit to this. They have rangers, they have lifeguards, they've done development to make access to the beach, yet they're not part of the assessment district. The creek is part of the assessment district, but not the beach. Why is that?
Correct. The beach is not an assessor parcel that can be assessed.
Yes, it can. It's public property. The creek is assessed. I mean, if you want to show me, you know, a regulation that says that, I'm happy to hear it, but that's not true. That's a state park. It's state property.
So do you have any additional questions, or should I move on?
I just, no, you can, you know, you can see why I'm urging people to vote no on this. Thank you.
Okay, Joey, did you get your question answered when previously? So I'm not hearing from Joey, but I'll just respond. So based on that previous discussion that we were having about the outlet, so we're not saying that there will not be any horizontal discharge towards the beach. If it bubbles up, there would be some horizontal discharge towards the beach. So we'll move to Stacy.
Hi, I'm Stacy. I have a couple questions. Thank you. I don't know who Unbar is, but I really appreciate your comments. Yeah, so I also feel like the assessment is very inequitable, the way that you've created it. I feel like there's certain streets that should have been included. I actually feel like all of Aptos should have been included. And I'm wondering how you calculated who paid for the Capitola Library to be renovated and things like that, because that obviously is an access to everyone. And I know that must have been a big project too. And I'm just wondering why we have to fit the bill. There are people who are elderly, people who this is their second home, people who have just bought that. I mean, that's a huge amount of tax to be just adding on. A couple dollars, you know, is what's like a normal additional tax when you do propositions or things like that, but hundreds, thousands of dollars is just, it just doesn't make sense, and it's really unfair. And I think people would have been much more willing to accept this if you made it more reasonable and spread it out. That's my basic point.
So there was I think a couple of questions in there. So basically, you know, the reasoning why, you know, well, first of all, you know, there isn't a big pot of money that we can pull from to. That's why the whole reason why we're doing this assessment district or proposing the assessment district is because there isn't a funding source that's been identified. And then part of the, you know, the assessment district formation law and Prop 218 really requires, you know, the special benefit versus the general benefit calculation. And so the homes that are in the Rio Del Mar Flats area, and some of the ones, you know, along Beach Drive to a lesser extent, and then across Aptos Creek, they are receiving a greater benefit because they're in it, they're in the flood zone and so forth. So that's why, you know, and it all has to do with, you know, what the, you know, Prop 218, which is approved by the voters, and the assessment district law. I mean, it really kind of forces our hand to really, you know, put it on the properties that are receiving the direct benefit.
But as you know, and it was said before, I mean, this is a huge thoroughfare. It's not like Valencia where the bridge fell down. You know, that is a direct benefit to that local neighborhood. Yeah, maybe the kids that go to the Valencia Elementary School, that was an issue, but that's a small little area that would make more sense. But this is a huge thoroughfare. This is like a commuter lane. I happen to be the lucky one. I'm up on the hill, but we can see down that, you know, sometimes it's just a traffic jam out there, and especially during the floods, you know, and it doesn't make sense that wouldn't just automatically be a part of the conversation. And I know you said something about the general, but it should have been included in the discussion from the very beginning so that we had a better understanding. And I also think that there's a way to, you know, like Rio Del Mar Boulevard is not a part of the assessment, but they all go, they go down the Rio Del Mar Boulevard and then come through the flood. You know, that's just the natural course, but it just doesn't make sense. It's just completely unfair. Sorry.
Okay, no, I understand your comments and your concerns. I mean, it still goes back to what I was kind of previously talking about, the general versus the special benefits. I'm going to move on to Deborah. So it looks like you wrote, apparently upslope properties which contribute runoff are not considered to be receiving benefits. So they're outside of the flood zone, so they're not receiving, or the area that's going to be receiving benefits by this project, so they're not receiving those special benefits. So that's why they're excluded from that. Eric Thorson asked if he wants to talk about battery power benefits. Eric, if you want to talk about that, go for it.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Essentially, I've learned a lot of things about living here for 30 years in this area. And one of the things that I've done recently has opened my eyes to some new possibilities. I have recently installed complete solar power and battery backup on my house. And I've found that I'm actually being paid by PG&E to have this. So not only has my power bills dropped precipitously, but I'm actually making money off of the generation off the power of my roof. Now, it seems to me that no one is going to be happy with being assessed. And the arguments here are kind of predictable. Is some people are going to feel like they've been assessed too much, and others are going to stay quiet. And I fear the whole thing is going to go down because of not thinking outside the box. Now, the box to me has changed. Imagine with me that you have the current system. And instead of using a peaker power system, is what you're doing right now, you're going to be installing a large machine. I guess you're going to, it's either gasoline or I'm not sure what the generator is. I don't know, you can maybe enlighten me on that. But the point is, imagine, for example, instead of powering it with a generator, you used a battery. And then in the battery, when times were in a storm, when we lose power, we could all share that battery. Our entire neighborhood could retain power, just as I do. Now, this could be used when the pump need to be run and PG&E was offline to the pump. So essentially, instead of framing this thing as a cost only, to where we get no benefit at all from it, except when times are bad, why not have a shared utility where we can, for roughly the same cost, become independent and not have blackouts? This is the last 2 times we've had blackouts in this area. I didn't even know it. I had to get a call from PG&E to let me know that I had blacked out. So I'm not saying that this is wrong or assessments are wrong. I'd rather just turn the discussion into, okay, if there's an assessment, how can I get something good out of this? And I think we can, but I don't think it changes the plan that these folks have worked on so hard. It just changes how we power it. And that's all I had to say.
I mean, Eric, I really like your thinking outside the box ideas. You know, part of the struggle that we have with this one is funding. This is a largely FEMA supported project, a flood mitigation grant project. They look at things like benefit cost ratio and so forth. So, there isn't a whole lot of room for something with batteries and solar and alternative energy on there. There's additional costs that would be on there. I am a little hesitant to, at this time late in the game, it's a little tough to do that, to do something like that, but it's also, I hear the concerns of people right now about, additional assessment, or we're not asking people to pay for the construction of the project as we do, or what happens in other assessment districts. So those costs, for alternative energy wouldn't be paid for by FEMA. So that would be borne by the residents in the area. So that's just something to think about and consider as well. Rachel, you have your hand up, and then I'm going to go to Nancy next.
Yeah, just wanted to say the cost of the power itself is very small compared to the cost of the other maintenance for the project. So we would not be saving much money if we use battery. Yes, it would have been, like you're saying, ideas out of the box, but for the cost of the power is not a huge.
It's probably worth mentioning the economics of microgrids isn't as amazing as you would think. I think the megawatt cost on a microgrid is north of 2 million per megawatt. A megawatt, you would need multiple megawatts to fund or to power the number of homes in the flats area. So I think the economics are not there, to be honest.
Well, I'd like to add in that a question then. Why has PG&E then opted for these giant battery packs if it wasn't in their benefit? And this is exactly what they've done down at Moss Landing. Now, and the prices are way lower than you just stated. They're not. The answer is that no one has talked to anyone about this. Nobody. So the point is, you're saying that it costs $2 million per megawatt. You can look on Tesla's site right now and see it's 1 million a megawatt or less. Now, the point is, I think we need to take our breath, ask the simple question of how much does it cost to put in a battery? Can we share that battery? And wouldn't everyone like to get some benefit out of this project? Wouldn't they like to have some protection from blackouts and brownouts? Now, it might cost a little bit more. So maybe the assessment goes up by 2% or 5% or even 10%. The point is, any rational person is going to look at cost benefit on their own basis. And they're going to say something like, well, if I do it the way I'm doing it now, it costs me $200 and I get no benefit. For $300, I get battery protection. I get some kind of blackout, brownout protection. And who knows down the road what more can come out of that. But I think all we need to do is ask. And I see we're just going forward and we're not asking. And I think we should.
How do you talk? Get on this.
So Matt, do you have any response to that, or should we just move on to?
I think we should move on. I think it's a good comment. We should move on.
All right, I'll go to Nancy next.
Yes. My question isn't about the project and it's not about the assessment. It's about the ballot. I received a ballot in the mail and it is an open ballot. It is not a secret ballot. And I asked the state if that was legal and they referred me to the county. And I emailed the person they suggested at the county about a week ago and I've heard nothing back. And I want to know why. I've been voting in this from this residence for nearly 40 years. And I've never received an open ballot before. They've always been secret ballots. And I wondered why that is. And if it isn't improper to have an open ballot when this seems to be a pretty contentious issue.
I'll ask Sarah or maybe Matt to answer that one. Sarah, do you want to address that one?
Yeah, happy to speak to that. So this is not a ballot as in the ballots that you receive if you're, say, voting for president or senator or school board or what have you. This is an assessment ballot that is an entirely different process under Proposition 218 that is part of California's Constitution. It is not a secret ballot because the ballot itself is very specific to your property. The ballot is weighted by the dollar amount of the financial obligation or assessment amount assigned to each individual property. So in order to weight the ballots returned, we have to know which property and what assessment amount associated with that property is casting their ballot either in favor or in opposition. So again, this is an entirely separate process. These are not secret ballots at all. And once they are tabulated, they become a matter of public record as part of the assessment ballot proceeding. So it's just to reiterate, it is just an entirely different process than the vote that you cast for other elections that you may have participated in for, again, president or senator or what have you.
So in other words, when I cast that ballot, it will become a public record. And if somebody's on the side that I didn't vote on, they will know that.
It is possible for them to know that information, yes.
They would have to do a public records request. We don't publish it, but if somebody comes in and they want to know how everybody voted, that is public record.
That's a little scary. I mean, this seems to be fairly contentious. There seem to be a lot of people who are either satisfied or dissatisfied with what's going on. And I don't want to not vote, but I'm afraid to vote. I think there's other ways. I mean, if you vote in a primary election, there are people who vote for in each party. Those are separate, those are secret.
Understood. This is just an entirely different process under California's Constitution, Article 13D, and the implementation statutes that are part of the government code. If you'd like, I can get some code references to those.
Yes, I would like that. I would like that.
Sure, I'll go ahead and post them in the chat. I'll look them up and post them in the chat for you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll move on to Alan Johnson.
This isn't fair.
Alan, are you there? Alan, I'm not hearing anything from you. Maybe we'll come back to Alan. Is there anybody else? Okay, Victoria.
Hi there. I'm down on Treasure Island and I had a couple of questions. And I'm wondering what happens, say in 5 years and this pump is put in and the pump fails. So what happens down that line that we're in this assessment district, we're paying for the maintenance costs and that happens, who's paying for that and how much?
So there is built into the assessment of the maintenance, the annual maintenance, there is some contingencies for kind of unknowns. So we would build up reserves. That's the word I was looking for, because things will have to be replaced over time. So that's part of the assessment.
And then the next thing I want to know is how are the ballots going right now? Are people voting? Do you have that information? And if say that the community does not want this happening right now, you get a no from the majority. What happens with this project?
So we have been receiving ballots. I don't have a count of the ballots or have any sense of how people are voting. So I'm trying to think of what your next question was. So they're gonna be counted on August 24th and at the board meeting on that day. So that's when the results of the ballots will be will be counted and revealed to the public, and then the Board of Supervisors, or actually the Board of Directors for the zone, will be voting on, to keep along with the formation of the district. If we don't have, if it doesn't pass, so if the majority of the assessment voters, if it doesn't pass, then we don't have the money for the maintenance, so we wouldn't build the project.
Thank you very much for answering.
I'm going to try Alan again here. Alan, are you on the line? Okay, so I see a question in the chat about if you've not received a ballot, is there a way to get a duplicate ballot? Yes, there is. You can, Rachel, why don't you put your name in the chat, your email address in the chat. Anybody can email Rachel, or if they didn't receive a ballot and they want to get one, you can get a replacement ballot and we'll get that out to you right away. Let me see if there's Ophelia. Looks like you have a comment.
Yes, you and I communicated my property is being included, even though I know 100% I will not receive benefit. I've lived in this area since 1991, and I have witnessed every flood and so on. And I won't have access problems, and I will not have flooding problems. However, the community will benefit. Lots of neighbors in the flats will benefit. And so my concern is that there's a flaw in the system that is causing the disagreements and the possibility that it's not going to get voted. And so I would like to suggest that there be some changes made to the way you're structuring these assessments, either to have a gradation, because that $125, which is the one that I'm being assessed, doesn't allow for anything less than that, and or maybe expanding it more so that the amounts for everybody would be lower. I mean, I'm just thinking that it's contentious because there's some sort of flaw that I am not in a position to analyze, but it seems to me that it's a very worthy idea. The flooding is very bad for all the people who live in the flats area. And, I would like to vote yes, and yet that amount seems totally unreasonable for me, because I will not have access problems, and I know I won't have flooding problems. So that's my comment. I just think there should be some sort of re-evaluation of how you're going about this.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments. And one thing I want to say too is that when our consulting team, NBS, when they looked at the area, we know that the more people that you have, the lower it's going to be for everybody, what the assessments about would be. But they really looked at, who can really be assessed, based upon the assessment law, Prop 218 and so forth. So, I mean, you started out looking at, projects up above that contribute water, or houses up above that contribute water and all that, but it really kind of whittles down to, the size of the boundaries of the assessment district now. I mean, if possible, if we could go in a larger area, we would have loved to, because I think it's a lot easier for people to vote yes on something that has a lower amount to it. But I mean, I understand your comments, but we're really limited by what we can do with forming assessment districts.
Is there any other pieces of it that can be tweaked? Because, like I said, the people who were definitely going to get affected and who will benefit should get help. But I'm concerned that it's not going to happen. maybe other things that can be looked at. I don't know, like the gentleman that was, or somebody that was suggesting including the state park having a much bigger contribution load. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, thank you for your comments. I see Alan's comments in the chat. So when will the project start? If it passes, the project would start early 2022. Rachel, is that about what we're thinking?
It's gonna be like in the spring, about late March, early April, probably the staging and clearing gonna start in early April. Assuming we get good bids, because we still have a process to go for bids. And if we get good bids, we will start construction in April.
And then that's the timeline to finish the project, Rachel.
And we'll finish it during the summer. By October, we will be done.
Okay. So Stacy had a comment in the chat. So another thought, if you know that you have $4 million, why can't you include the extra $115,000 in the construction bid? If contractors are working for the city, they should be able to alter their bid. So the money is grant funds, and the grant funds are specific to construction. So we wouldn't be allowed to use, if we had $4.2 million, say in grant money, and the bids came in less, they wouldn't give us that extra money to pay for the assessment. So that's just the what's required for the grant. And how will non-returned ballots be counted? Non-returned ballots will not be counted. So if you don't vote, they're not counted. And looks like the weighted vote. So explain the weighted vote. So easiest way to explain it. So say if I'm just going to use kind of general terms or general amounts. So say if somebody is in an area that, say their assessment is, I'm just making up numbers here. So say if somebody's assessment is $300 a year and another person's assessment is $100 a year. So that person that has $300 a year assessment, their weighted vote would count 3 times more than that $100 assessment. So that's how the weighting votes, or how the weighting works for the voting. And then there's a question from Inbar. Sarah, can you please provide support for your position that the whole of Rio Del Mar State Beach property can't be assessed as part of the assessment district, as seems requirement pursuant to Prop 218 and cases such as Manteca Unified School versus Reclamation District 17?
Yeah, and I will, Inbar, thank you for that. I did misspeak earlier when I said that the beach itself was not an assessor parcel. It is an assessor parcel, but again, we have captured the assessment related to beach access on the parking lot parcel. I am very familiar with that Manteca Unified School District versus RD17 case. And that has to do, just for everyone's benefit here, has to do with the fact that of whether in particular water assessment law, which is not what we're forming this district under, but water assessment law very clearly says that public property does not receive an assessment. And so there was an incongruity with the water assessment and Proposition 218 saying that the public property does have to be assessed for the benefit derived or conferred to public property. And so that case was a clarification of that issue, that the Proposition 218, which is in Article 13D of the Constitution, does govern there, and that public property is to be assessed based on special benefit, even though the authorizing legislation of the water assessment law said that it did not. So again, we've captured that assessment for that beach property through the access to the parking lot parcel.
So let me comment on that. Actually, I cited Manteca only because it's actually to the standard of proof, which is clear and convincing evidence, and it's not, that's why I was cited. What had anything to do with the water district? It's the fact that you have to actually have a more than reasonable basis to do what you've actually done in terms of not including the whole estate parks and only including a 100-foot parcel of state parks and a 1-mile state park property into your assessment district. And for that, I have no, understanding of why you would do that. Yes, you included the parking lot. There's a mile of beach property or more. Thanks.
Okay, I don't see any other hands raised or any other questions or any other questions that anybody has. You can either start speaking or raise your hands or put your name in the chat. Okay, I think that sounds like there's nobody else. Victoria, do you have another question?
I'm so sorry. I actually did have one more question and I should have raised it earlier. I'm just wondering, without getting too much into the environmental studies and where the water is going to go and so forth, but it is a question I'm wondering just as a resident down here. If I'm going to the beach right now and this pump's going to be installed, where am I going to be seeing that water diverted to? Where is it being diverted to? If I'm walking down the beach, is it going to be flooded down the beach? What's going to go on with that?
Yeah, it's not even draining our block.
So the water would be so the water is going to be diverted. So some of it would still go to that outlet in the at the end of the Esplanade parking lot. But when you get to the levels where the water would start flooding the streets, and that's where it would be pumped over into that outlet across Beach Drive from the stairs that come down from Rio Del Mar Boulevard. Does that answer your question?
Is it gonna impact public access?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Kent, I think we're not convinced it will not impact because the water will actually flow, and that's the access path for most of the folks who go to the beach from the parking lot. They can't go on the right, so they go on the left side of the toilet structure, and that's the access path to the beach, and this water will flow right across their path.
Okay. Okay.
And I have a question.
Oh, you finally got it.
Okay.
And
Yes. Is this Fred?
yeah, Kent, am I on?
You are on.
Okay, thank you. My name's Mike Santoro, and I have a clarification question about the weighting of ballots. I heard your explanation, but hypothetically, my house is assessed at $350,000. The house next to me just sold for $1 million. Both of us have proposed assessments of $312 a year. So you're saying that the assessed valuation would have no relation to the weighting of our respective ballots. Is that correct?
The assessed value of your house has nothing to do with the weighting of the ballots. That's correct.
Okay, second question, and I'm trying to reduce this because I've already gone on record.
Was there another question there, Fred or Mike? Okay, I think I lost you. Okay, I'm gonna do one more question here, and I'm gonna
I have a comment. How you get on?
I think some people are having trouble with the technology. They're older. I'm sorry, but I think 3 different people have had trouble with the technology. They're not used to the Zoom, and it's a challenge for them to get on. So I don't know how we can hear them speak in a different way.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. There's a phone number that they could call into as well.
And they can write to us.
Can you hear me?
We will answer them directly. They can write to us.
So Dale, I'm going to take your comment as the last question, and then if anybody else has any follow-up questions, feel free to email myself or Rachel, and then we can post the questions in that CivicMic.com website, and we'll put that in the frequently asked questions, so that way everybody has the answers to the questions. So Dale, we'll take you as the last one here.
Thank you. I have a couple of comments. One is this whole process, just like this meeting today, I found out about it from another participant in the meeting here, not from the city or not from the county. So I'm really questioning or concerned, not this whole political process of getting us involved, I think has been flawed. And that's why there's a lot of questions and confusion out there. And irrespective of what Zach said about this being a process that's been discussed for years, frankly, I've heard about it. I got one notice before this one meeting. So to me, there's a real credibility issue in this political process. The second thing is I live on Treasure Island where Wixon and Aptos Beach and Treasure Island intersect there, that intersection. It has flooded every year for the last 40 years. County has not done anything about it each year, not even put up signs. The neighbor down below is the one that kind of keeps it clean. So it was going to be really discouraging if you proceed with this process and some of the problems are not resolved. And so I'm not assured from what I've heard that the problem at that intersection, Aptos Beach and Wixon, is going to be solved. I think we need to go back, start over. I don't know what the big rush here. All of a sudden, we're just rushing through this thing. We go back and inform people, look at all these issues, and make sure we understand what's happening. So I've just lost confidence in this whole process. And here's another thing. People are voting right now when we don't have all the information. It's crazy. It's like holding an ongoing election, for God's sakes. So it just seems to be, you're going to create more consternation and confusion. And frankly, a lot of people don't think the solution is going to work. So that's my comments.
Okay, thank you for your comments. So that's the end. Thank you for everybody for attending. Really appreciate your comments and your interest in it. Zach, did you have any questions or anything you wanted to say at the end here?
I mean, I just want to close up by saying that I mean, look, it has been an ongoing process. The county received this grant funding. The timing is we have to return it if construction doesn't start by a specific date. The county is not going to build a project it can't continue to maintain. So if we return the money, there is no Plan B project here. Even though I'm sorry you haven't attended any of the meetings in the last 9 years that I've been in. There's been a lot. I've written repeated articles for the Aptos Times and Aptos Life. We've had a lot of one-offs, a lot of office hours discussions on it. So, and then this is the 4th of these community meetings I participated in just in the last year alone. So there has been a lot, but we'll see whether people support it in the coming weeks.
Okay, thank you everybody for attending. And if you have questions, please reach out to myself or to Rachel. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.